You're 41 years old. You're standing in the presidential palace in Kabul. The president fled 4 hours ago. His tea is still warm on the desk. His computer screen is still on. Outside, your fighters are driving through streets you've never seen, honking horns, firing into the air, chanting. You've been fighting for this moment since you were 14 years old. 27 years. You won. And standing here in this marble room, you feel almost nothing. You don't understand that yet. You will. You grew up in Kandahar province. 200 people. No school. No hospital. 3 hours from the nearest city on a dirt road that turns to mud in winter. Your father farmed wheat. Your uncle fought the Soviets in the 1980s. He lost 2 fingers on his left hand and gained something else. A look in his eyes that men with no war experience don't have. People in your village still call him by his war name. You grew up on his stories. Foreign armies come, foreign armies leave. Afghanistan remains. You heard that phrase before you understood what it meant. When you were 9 years old, 3 men came to your village. Turbans, beards, Kalashnikovs on their back. They ate with your family. They spoke about God, about justice, about foreigners in Kabul who were dismantling everything sacred. Your father listened without speaking. Your uncle nodded slowly. That night, the men slept in your home. In the morning, they asked if any young men wanted to serve God. Your uncle looked at you. You looked at your father. Your father looked at the floor. You left with the men that afternoon. You were 14. You didn't look back. Not because you were brave, because you didn't know yet what looking back costs. They took you to a madrasa outside Quetta. 200 boys, most of them Afghan, some younger than you. 8 hours of Quran every day. Memorize, recite, repeat. The mullah had a voice that filled every room he entered. He said, dying in battle was the door to paradise. He said, the Afghan government were apostates. He said, the Americans were crusaders. You had no reason to question any of it. You had never used the internet. You had never met an American. You had never been to Kabul. The mullah's words filled the entire space of what he knew. 6 months later, you could strip a Kalashnikov in 40 seconds. You went back across the border. You were 15. You were ready. Or you thought you were ready. Ready and ready are 2 completely different things. Your first operation was an ambush on a NATO convoy in Helmand. Dawn. 12 men. RPGs. AKs. You waited in a ditch for 4 hours without moving. When the convoy came, the noise was something no one can prepare you for. You fired. They fired back. You ran when the commander said run. 3 kilometers through compounds and fields. You hid in a farmer's house for 6 hours. The farmer didn't look at you once. He bought tea without being asked. He knew better than to have a face. That night, your commander said it was a good operation. You got paid 300 rupees, $3. You did it again the following week, and the week after that. This became your life. What nobody tells you is what happens inside after first year. The ideology that felt like fire at 15 starts to feel like furniture. Just there, present, something you move around. You start feeling it and start performing it. You say the words because the words are required. You do the operations because the operations are required. The gap between what you feel and what you show becomes the most important skill you develop. In this organization, doubt is not a private matter. Doubt is a death sentence. So you close the file, you lock it, you keep moving. By 24, you commanded 30 fighters, 3 districts in Helmand. You controlled which roads got taxed, which farmers grew poppy, which grew wheat. Poppy funded the Taliban. Wheat fed families. The farmers grew poppy. They didn't have a choice. You knew that. You filed it. The drones were constant by then. A sound like a distant lawnmower that never stopped. You learned to change locations every night. Never sleep in the same place twice. Never use a phone outdoors. Never gather more than 6 men in one spot. 3 commanders in the neighboring districts were killed by drone strikes that year. One was eating lunch. One was sleeping. One was walking to the mosque. The drone doesn't care what you're doing. It waits until it's certain. Then it doesn't miss. You stop eating in groups. You stop sleeping for more than 2 hours at a time. You started to understand what your uncle meant when he said, war changes the inside before it changes anything else. There was a fighter in your unit, Yusuf, 19 years old, from a village near yours. He asked you once, late at night, when no one else was close, if you thought this would ever end. You told him, yes, victory was certain. God was with the faithful. He nodded. He believed you. He died 6 weeks later, stepping on a NATO mine on a road he'd walked 100 times. You said the right words at his burial. You said, God chose him for paradise. You believed maybe 40% of what you said. You filed the rest. The Americans signed the Doha Agreement in 2020. They were leaving. You'd heard this before. But this time, the intelligence was different. The Afghan army had 300,000 soldiers on paper. Your people were inside every base, every province, every ministry. The real number was maybe 90,000. Most hadn't been paid in months. Their commanders were stealing their salaries. The soldiers knew it. They weren't going to die for commanders who stole from them. You knew this before the Americans did. August 2021. You moved, district by district, province by province. The Afghan army didn't fight. They surrendered. They went home. They changed clothes. Some of them joined you. Province capitals fell in hours, not days, hours. Kabul fell in a morning, which brings you back to this place. This warm tea, this glowing screen. 41 years old. You won. You sent a message to your fighters. Maintain order. No looting. No reprisals. You walk through the rooms. Marble floors. Air conditioning. Paintings on the wall. You think about the madrasa in Quetta. That mullah who said this day would come. You were 14 when he said it. He was right. It took 27 years. He was right. But then something happens that you don't expect. You sit down in the president's chair and the file opens. The one you've been locked in for 27 years. Yusuf asking if it would ever end. The farmer who wouldn't look at you. The children who died of hunger in your district in 2019. Not from bombs, from hunger. 300 rupees, $3. What you said at Yusuf's grave, 40%. You close the file. You stand up. There's work to do. Governing is not the same as fighting. Fighting has a clear enemy. Governing has 40 million people and no money and no recognition from any country on earth. And girls who haven't been in school since you took the provinces. You were trained for one thing. You were given another. 3 years later, you run a province of 1.4 million people. The economy is worse than under the Americans. International aid dried up the week you took over. The banks are frozen. Young men who know nothing except what you knew at 15. Ideology without context. Faith without questions. And now the enforcers of a system that was supposed to be the answer to everything. You watch them and you see yourself. You see what you were. You're not sure what you feel about that. You're not allowed to be unsure. So you're certain. You're always certain. Even at 3 a.m. when the certainty wears thin. Even when you think about your father looking at the floor. Whether he was proud when you left. Whether he waited for you to come back. Whether he ever told your mother what he did that afternoon. You never went back to find out. The village is still there. 200 people. No school. No hospital. 3 hours from the city on a dirt road. Some things didn't change. Some things never do. Foreign armies come. Foreign armies leave. Afghanistan remains. So do you. And in the quietest part of you, in the file you keep locking and locking and locking, you're still 14, standing in the doorway. Your father looking at the floor. Your uncle looking at you. And somewhere behind you, a life you never lived.